Welcome to Business Design School, where we teach the art and science of business design. Whether you're looking to transform your organization or launch your next big idea, Business Design School is where you learn to make it happen. Today's subject, design leadership. And I'm joined by Maria Giudice, a trailblazing design leader, entrepreneur, and visionary in the field of human-centered innovation. As the founder of the award-winning studio, Hot Studio, former leader of design at places like Facebook and Autodesk, and co-author of books like Rise of the DEO and Changemakers, Maria has helped organizations around the world integrate design more deeply into their strategy and culture. So we'll be exploring her journey, her approach to leadership, and how she sees design shaping the future of business. Welcome, Maria. Thanks for joining us.
So happy to be here today, Sam.
Tell us a bit about what initially drew you into the world of design.
So I wanted to be a famous artist as a child. Came out of the womb wanting to make art practically. I always was attracted to, imagery and creativity. My family is very creative. My uncle was Frank Frazetta. He was a well-known fantasy painter. He had a huge influence on me growing up. And so my destiny was to be a painter. And that was my trajectory. I was lucky enough in life to know that right away. And I went to art school. I went to Cooper Union. And when I entered Cooper Union as a student, I didn't really understand how those things intersected at all. But little did I know that very intersection was what is in the world that I live in today. So I got into Cooper Union. I started out as a painter. I came out as a graphic designer. And what drew me to design the most was, when I was at Cooper, I was really disillusioned about graphic design. I was taking the classes, but I was like, it feels so formulaic. Like, here's a list of fonts you should use. Always flush left. Make sure you have a ton of white space around things and, use good imagery. There, boom, that's graphic design. And it wasn't until my senior year of college where a man named Richard Saul-Werman was the guest instructor. And he walked into the room and he looked nothing like what designers looked like at the time in the 80s. He was this short, fat man with a scarf and he was cursing up a storm. And I fell in love with him. And he said the thing that put me on the path for the rest of my life. He said to us, paraphrasing, "You are all full of shit." He said, design is not about decoration. It's not about making things pretty. Your job is to help make sense of the world on behalf of people. And I was like, mic drop, boom, like perfect. Instant purpose in life, got it, understand it. And that really was the thing that has like catalyzed my career, has, just put me on a very straight trajectory where even to this day, I strongly believe that the role of the designer is to be in service to others, is to use our skills and our creativity to help people make sense of the world. And so that's still my purpose to this day.
Make sense of the world. We can help people do that. We could try. I love that. How about leadership? I mean, that's such an important part of your career and your process. Like, were there any early experiences or mentors that helped you shape how you think of leadership?
I think about my natural inclination to be a leader. I was always that person who organized other people. I was the one who, if I had an idea, I would get everybody together to do something together. And I was when I was growing up as a kid in Staten Island, I had the best parties. I had themes, I had costumes, I had designed the experience, I designed my invitations. I had everything designed. I had the whole experience mapped out from beginning to end. And so the combination of the creativity and then this ability to work with people to get them to believe in something that's bigger than one single person, those were the two qualities that I kind of, brought forth in the world. And so leadership really came out of that organic quality to gather people, to communicate the purpose, to get them excited and enthusiastic, and to, move forth with, excellence and joy. It was a total accident that I became a successful businesswoman.
Let's talk about that. Tell us about Hot Studio, founding that, and then even transitioning from running a studio to then running design within these large organizations.
I had it in my head that when I graduate college, I'd love to be part of an artist collective, a collective of designers working together. So I didn't design that, but I had that wish and dream in my head that kind of stuck. And so I graduated college, I graduated and I went to go work for Richard Saul Wurman. So I worked,
how wonderful.
I worked for him as a book designer in New York, where I lived. And while I was working for Richard, he got the gig to redesign the Pacific Bell Yellow Pages. And so I thought that would be a cool project to work on for just a few months. So I drove out cross country with my girlfriend and I helped set up his office. When I got here, there was like no office. There was no people. There was like, I reported to work. There was nobody there. And then slowly but surely, Richard had more people show up. And so I got to witness, because I was very low level, how to set up a company, right, from zero.
How to build.
Yeah. And then I worked for the company, the Understanding Business, for 2 or 3 years. I was in charge of designing all the maps for California and Nevada. So I became a cartographer. And then I needed a lot of people to help me do that. And so I just started, I became sort of a creative director overnight. And, I was 24 years old and I was, managing a team of 15. So, again, it was just really sort of natural for me to do that. And then I got to a place at the Understanding Business where I felt like I wasn't growing anymore. So I left and I started freelancing. And this was at the dawn of the digital age. I knew how to design using computers. And I started freelancing. I just kept getting busy. So I started hiring my friends to help. And then I brought on a partner for a few years and that didn't work. And then that partner left and I just kept building. And the next thing you know, I had a company. Next thing, it's like, oh, there's people here. I'm going to need structure.
Yeah.
I got to figure out how to do that.
They want to be paid.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I have to pay and think about healthcare. I was still in my 20s, very young. So I kind of just figured it out along the way. I got a BFA. I did not get an MBA. But whenever I had gaps in my knowledge, I would take classes to learn about things like accounting. And that's kind of how I hacked my way through building a company. And the way I do it without fear is I look at every problem like a design problem. So I'm not afraid of solving problems. I'm not afraid of the things that are presented to me because I see those things as opportunities for design.
You wrote this amazing book, Rise of the DEO, which I remember seeing and reading and being like, as a designer, like, what an amazing concept, like a design executive officer. Of course, I was like, I want to be that. I was just blown away. I want to get your take on what a DEO is. Like, what got you thinking about even sharing what design could be at that leadership level?
Well, I didn't really know that I was doing anything very differently, right? Because again, I didn't have any assumptions going into it. At 13, I was asked to give a TEDx talk, which is terrifying. And I remember talking to my speech coaches at the time, I don't have anything relevant to say.
Which is so untrue.
It was
yes.
It's like a business. The theme was about business, right? And I was like, I don't think I do anything special. And the company was called Tech Talks, and the woman who it was a couple, but this woman, Christy Danes, looked at me like, what are you kidding me? Maria, you run a company differently than anybody I've ever experienced. And she said, you're not a CEO, you're a DEO. So she coined the phrase DEO. And that really like stuck. And which got me on the stage to talk about the belief that the next great leaders in the world are going to be creative business leaders. And so I define the DEO as a creative business leader who looks at all problems as design problems, solvable through imagination and metrics. I looked at the qualities of what a DEO is, and I came up with a couple of qualities. They're change agents, risk takers. They use intuition as well as business acumen. They look at things in terms of systems, so systems thinking. They are centered on people, that the purpose that they are looking at the world is to benefit humans or all sentient beings, and then they get shit done. And these are things that designers learn in school. These are the things that this is qualities as designers. So if you apply those qualities to business problems, my hypothesis was you're going to get great outcomes. And so,
did you get to test that when you got to some of these larger enterprises?
Well, that's got me to write change makers, frankly, because I got into these organizations thinking I had all the answers, right? And that it's not necessarily the good ideas always win in large companies. It's really about winning over people and influence and hoping that you keep your integrity through the process. And so when I got to Facebook, I really struggled. My company was acquired by Facebook. And one of the reasons why Facebook acquired Hut Studio was, this was 2013. It was 2013. Rise of the DEO came out, and I was 50 years old, and Mark Zuckerberg was 25 years old.
Fantastic.
So it's an understatement to think that I looked at the world very differently than he did at that time. And it was really hard for me to work in an environment that was, they valued, output, what will you do for me lately? They didn't necessarily value wisdom. I got recruited to go work at Autodesk. And Autodesk was a very different kind of company. First of all, the CEO, Carl Bass, was a guy I interviewed for Rise of the DEO. So I already knew that he understood the intersection of creativity and technology. He was really supportive of me being hired. And the chief product officer at the time was my champion. He's like, I know who you are. I know what you can bring. I don't know what your role will be yet, because they never had a VP of design at the time. But I want you in here. And so, lesson number one about change making is you have to have executive champions who have your back. Mm-hmm. And I was wildly successful at Autodesk while they were both in power. Mm-hmm. But 2 years later, Carl Bass stepped down. My boss quit. And suddenly I was in a position where there was nobody at the top who supported my position or believed that design should be at the high level of organization. And that's when I got shown the door. Yep. And that, again, rocked me to my core, because it's like, hey, I have the receipts. I have the details. I have so much data to show how I was, successful in this organization. Didn't matter, because the people in charge were threatened by me and didn't like me. And I was shown the door. So then I went through, again, shock and disbelief, like, how could this be? And that got me to think about, okay, what could I learn from this? What did I do well that I can be really proud of? But what were things that I missed that led me to lose my job? And then I got curious, and I started interviewing people who I respected in multiple industries, who I felt like were in business, were leading change in small ways and large ways. And that took about a year of interviewing people. And then I got I looked at the patterns and recruited my co-author, Christopher Ireland.
Nice.
And I talked her into writing a book. And then we wrote a book together.
That's awesome.
It was like you could say it was either was a cathartic or it was my fuck you book.
That's right. Take that.
Yeah, it's my
I understand that.
Yeah. So, and as now that I'm older, I'm in my 60s now. I've been in this industry for almost 40 years. I feel like my role as a leader now is to share my experience with others.
I want to go back to because I've heard in my sort of like research in corporate innovation and design, that strategy of, hey, I built relationships with people who were like believers in what I was doing. And then in that time, I was able to thrive.
Yes.
And then those people either moved on or changed roles, and the new people weren't believers.
Yes.
And so I know with your experience sort of under your belt, like if you could go back, is there anything you would do differently? Like you need people and you need trusting relationships. I think that's, table stakes, but what would you do differently to have it so that potentially new CEO or new, C-suite comes in and, not saying it's just like overnight, but that you don't sort of lose that momentum as much.
That's why I wrote the book Change Makers, which was, what could have been done differently. There was no playbook. What I learned was, first of all, don't come in too hot. Don't come in assuming that you are going to be solving problems that haven't been solved before, that people haven't tried to solve these and haven't been successful for a number of reasons, and you should find out why. So you got to come in with a little bit of humility and respect for the people who are already in the system. And then you need to not be so beholden to the org chart, assuming that that is the position of power. The position of power is throughout the organization, and there are people who hold power that may or may not support you even being there. So you need to do your research. You need to really understand the system, and you need to understand the people who are working within this system, what their motivations are. What are they afraid of? What does success look like for them? And build those. So you have to do this ahead of time. And look outside of your org. Look outside your direct reports or your silo. You look around. My cat is on my shoulders.
Love it. Fantastic.
And then try to build. You try to help those what we call tradition holders become supporters. Now they may never be supportive. You may never win them over, but then you need to make sure that you have your eyes wide open. And because they can either be threats later on or they can slow your initiative down. So it's not a perfect science, but the more you know about the people in your system, the more successful you're going to be. And to find shared goals and alignments with them so that they feel like it's a win-win. I often tell people that designers are really good at being the relentless customer ally. We are not necessarily good at working inside an organization and treating people with the same level of compassion.
Yeah. Wow.
And we need to be more compassionate with the people that we work with, even if they are blocking what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Almost as if, you're kind of blowing my mind there that they're one of our user groups, right? Like we're so, like our users are so sacred, right? In design. Well, maybe we need to treat our colleagues as our users.
Equally.
Yeah.
And when you're working inside a large company, that might even be more important than the end user right now. I know.
Right. In order to get the outcomes that you want at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now you got me thinking about like internal personas and.
Yeah,
Let's
Absolutely.
go there actually, because I
Yeah,
really want to dig into, yeah, if you've used that, like, let's
yeah,
dive in.
yeah. And they were profiles that I didn't invent it. It came from this group that I learned about these personas through ORSC, which is a team coaching organization where I became certified. And I thought it was really great. These were like change profiles. And they defined it in three types. There's the profile called leapers. So leapers are the people and organizations who will right out of the gate support your initiative. They are enthusiastic. They love to start new things. They love fresh ideas. They're the early adopters. They are enthusiastic people that you start building like supporters around, and they're great evangelizers of your mission. They're great at starting things, not necessarily great at finishing things, because it's when they get into the weeds of details they lose
And the
interest.
leap again.
Yeah. Oh, another, they go leap. And then the second group is the bridge builders. So these are the people in organizations who require evidence. So they're slower to adopt change, and they want to see evidence before you win their support. But if they believe in the evidence, they can then be very strong supporters. And then the third group, which is the slowest to adopt change, is called the tradition holders. Tradition holders are people typically who've been in the organization a really long time and have change fatigue. And they've seen people like me come and go like the wind. They've seen people like me fail miserably. So they kind of wait things out. They're kind of a little stealth. They may be very vocal in their support or lack of support, but more often than not, they can be very quiet. And these are the people you have to pay the most attention to. And for them, the way you could win them over is make sure that you're doing things that support their initiatives and give them a lot of credit and respect and acknowledgement. Because they're there and they might be there a long time, but then they don't really feel like they get the credit. So these are the three profiles to be starting from.
Yeah,
And
I
so
can see them.
oftentimes when I teach workshops, I have people do a system map of the people system, right? And then they do the map and a stakeholder map or a people map. And then I have them identify the leapers, the bridge builders, and the tradition holders throughout the system. And then we devise strategies of engagement for the people within the system.
I love that. That's so cool. So cool. Again, it's a design project within the design project.
Yes.
Kind of thinking about in the back of my brain ever since you said that design is in service of, and design is in service of technology or the business, the client, the customer. Within the business, like, where can design have true accountability, right? The business certainly has true accountability around results. Tech has accountability. Do we have accountability as designers? Do we want it? Is it there for us to find?
That's a tough question.
It's been rattling back here, and I'm like, maybe Maria knows.
When you're in the management and director role, you might be in charge of multiple teams of designers, right? And so your success is being measured based on whether their teams are successful, right? So the accountability there is making sure that you have really good culture and that you're hiring the right people with the right skills at the right level. And so that's where accountability is there. Do they have people who are really successful at what they do? Are they creating a culture that can allow designers to grow and thrive?
Certainly accountable for that.
And then you move up to leadership at the, C-suite level. And then you're really talking about the business. You are looking at the impact of people on the business and how the business can thrive through the lens of serving people. And that's serving their customers and making sure that the customers love the product or service, and want to buy it and support it. Or the employees that are throughout the company, are they creating a culture that's going to create innovation, which everybody is responsible, right? Designers don't own innovation. How at that level, how do you become the cheerleader, the evangelist for creative thinking as it applies to the business? And then you figure out what kind of metrics can support that idea. And so the accountability is really dependent on where you sit in the organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I'm hearing is accountable for that culture of design and innovation, which creates the future, right? That's really interesting.
And when you get to that level, you might not even be using design language, and that's okay, right? Because you don't have to. People get so hung up on language, and they defend. I was at a conference recently where this speaker was on a rant around the difference between UX and UI. I'm like, who gives a shit? You give a shit. But why should people in organizations need to know and care that they're using the right or wrong language to define something? They can call it whatever they want. It's what comes out of it. And if people get hung up on the word design, come up with a word that they use because the work that we do is needed, is important, but we often shoot ourselves in the foot by fighting the wrong fights.
Yeah. I have been, of course, I ran a design museum. I've been this staunch believer in design. And lately I've been can I change my department name from business design to business acceleration, right? What business leader would not want to hire the business acceleration team?
And people do that all the time, I mean, a lot of design leaders right now are dropping the word design and calling themselves business product executives.
Right. Yeah.
They're not going to stop being designers. Right. They're just using the language of the business.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's a huge takeaway for sure.
Yeah.
We got to drop some of our pride, maybe ego,
and just focus on what's important. And again, empathy and compassion for your coworkers. They might not understand the language that you're speaking, right? And so find a common language that the business speaks. And it's not just business. It could be marketing. It could be engineering language. It could be legal language, and help them understand that you're part of the team and you look at the world differently. You are that people-centered executive who is going to keep them honest about the why they're doing the work.
If folks want to learn more about your work, I know they could check out your books. So we got Rise of the DEO, we've got Change Makers. Your website also has awesome resources, hotstudio.com. All right, so this is a school. I'm going to ask you, if you were teaching a class on business design, what one resource would you recommend for students to learn more about design leadership in general, beyond your two fantastic books?
I would look at the work that Nathan Shedroff is doing, because he's another one of those really great design leaders who works at the intersection of design and business. And he has a really great book out on strategy right now.
I so appreciate you sharing your wisdom. Thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure. And, carry on.
Yeah. Remember, folks, check out Maria's incredible work at hotstudio.com. And of course, stay in class at businessdesignschool.org.